Hello and welcome to the Indian Express. This is a special broadcast. We are discussing the union budget for the next financial year, which has just been tabled. And I have with me the experts that we have in the newsroom. Let's start very quickly by hearing what are the first thoughts about the budget. Let me invite, first of all, Harish Damodaran, who looks at the agriculture and rural affairs in particular. Harish, the budget started off with a lot of talk on agriculture and rural. What did you make of it?
I don't think there's anything big in agriculture this time. Like many people were talking about, that probably the PM Kisan, the direct benefit transfer would be increased, etc. But which did not happen. In fact, I think the PM Kisan, the budget has been actually slashed, to about, I think, 60,000 crore. MG Narega has also been slashed from 89,400 crore to 6,000 crore. Okay, so I don't think there's the political economy message of this budget is the middle class finally matters. So far, I think the Modi government during its tenure, whatever, 8.5 years, I think they were focusing more on the poor, the vulnerable, the farmers, and corporates. I mean, as cynics would say, the first lot bring the votes, the last lot bring in the notes, right? I mean, the middle class was sort of squeezed in between. They were getting nothing from this. So I think a lot of messaging in this budget is for the middle class, and though I haven't analyzed the tax proposals per se, but I think this is largely meant for the middle class, and probably the context matters, because I think there are a lot of job layoffs happening. The middle class didn't have it bad in the last 2 years, even during the COVID, right? I mean, a lot of recruitments, a lot of IT jobs were being created, and whereas now we are seeing, even the big five, even the likes of Infosys, TCS, etc. They've not been taking in any new. Their headcount is not expanding. Rather, it has actually fallen. Like, for example, Tech Mahindra, which announced the results. So I think in terms of messaging, there was a need, because otherwise, the middle class, the narrative sort of slips away. That's, I think, the first thing which I can think of the budget.
Right. Thanks. I'll also request the viewers to ask questions. We have a whole panel of journalists who track different sections of the economy, so we'll take up those questions. And we'll get to the tax bit. I think our colleague Sandeep will have more to say on that. On the big picture, it seems like the government's larger strategy of going for capital expenditure, pushing it money through capital expenditure, and containing the fiscal deficit has largely been the same. So, Ishan, what is your take on broader take on the budget? What do you think?
So the three big points would be they've ramped up capital expenditure. That's in line with their philosophy of the last few years. They've maintained the fiscal deficit. They brought it down by 0.5%. The finance minister has reiterated the glide path. And as Harish said, the tax proposals. These are the three big broad takeaways. The budget documents, if you look, also have said that they're projecting a nominal GDP growth of 10.5%. Right? So if you assume the inflation at about 4.5-5% over next year, that means it is slightly more conservative than the 6.5% that the economic survey had assumed yesterday. So it would seem that they have been slightly more pessimistic than what the economic survey was projecting for growth this year, for next year.
Right. Great. I mean, that is a very interesting point, because I think for most part, the strategy has been to sort of minimize the role of the government per se and use it to switch capital expenditure from revenue to capital, and hope that the private sector comes to the party and creates job. But do you think that this budget actually incentivizes enough the private sector to sort of finally, one of the sentiments in economic survey yesterday was that we are on the precipice, as it were, of a revival, a robust revival. Do you think this budget aligns with that? Will it create that kind of a thing?
So a couple of points. The economic survey does make the point that the twin balance sheet crisis, which had been festering for some time now, seems to be behind us, right? So corporate and bank balance sheets are in much better position than before. So to that extent, what it argues is that we are on the cusp of a credit cycle of an investment pickup. Whether that materializes will depend upon a host of other factors, right? There's uncertainty in the economy. There is how capacity utilization plays out, how domestic demand plays out, and more importantly, what happens to exports in the global economic scenario that we are in right now. So a lot of these factors are going to play out, and there is some evidence that there's a pickup in private sector investments, but it's more skewed towards a few sectors, right? It's not broad based. There aren't enough indications of that. So for that, we'll have to wait and watch.
Right. And one of the things that we realized when we were talking to economists like Pranjal Bhandari is that a lot of the private sector investments that have happened are of a nature where they're replacing the older the lot. So it's not exactly fresh investment really increasing the production capacity. So that's also an issue. Let me bring in Aanchal. She would perhaps give us some understanding of what's been happening on the green energy push, because we heard a lot of the speech on green initiatives. Aanchal, what's your take on that?
Right. So yeah, a lot of focus has been given to green energy. This time, the budget has given an outlay of 35,000 crore for energy transition investment. It will be about priority capital investment towards energy transition. That's what the FM said. The government has already announced its national green hydrogen mission. For that also, there's an allocation of 297 crore for the next fiscal. And she also announced setting up of battery storage capacity of 4,000 megawatt in India with viability cap funding. They are aiming for a production of 5 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030. She also announced a green credit program, which she said will be notified under the Environment Protection Act. So there's a lot of focus push that we are seeing from the government side, a very conscious push towards green energy, and government will be working towards it. It also announced battery energy storage systems with capacity of 4,000 megawatt through 18 viability gap funding, which is also an important announcement from their side.
Okay, thanks a lot, Achal. Vaidi, if I may come to you, what's the big picture thing that you see? What sort of sprung out for you?
Couple of things very quickly, if I may just say three things which I thought were very striking to me. One, that the NDA government under Modi doesn't require budgets to win elections, in the sense that this budget doesn't give you any idea that a election, Lok Sabha election, is just 1 year away, right? So they haven't really splurged. So you would find some couple of interesting schemes which are focused on traditional areas, but they are not like, huge spends. That was number one. Second, I thought the economic survey which was presented by, Anant Nageshwaran yesterday gave clear pointers to what the budget could be. And I'm kind of surprised that the budget does what the survey says. The survey talked about, capital expenditure, continuing with it. The budget has done that. So if you just look at the 4 years growth in capital investment, I was just looking at the last 2-3 budgets. It has consistently risen from about 4.49 lakh crores, 3 years back to 10 lakh crores for the next year. So there is a steady growth in capex, and the government sees that there is a need to step in when private sector is, staying quiet, not really investing. The third and most important thing I thought was, at the end of the day, everybody looks like, if one looks at the markets and there's one number, which is the Sensex or the Nifty, or one looks at the economy, there's one number, which is the fiscal deficit. These two numbers kind of, everything passes through the drain. And then, if there is one thing which comes out is the fiscal deficit and the Sensex number. So the fiscal deficit part, I think they have stuck to the target because, last year's budget, everybody we all analyzed and sat and thought that, the projections are very, very modest in terms of revenue. So they had the luxury. So they have met the fiscal deficit target, and they have set out a glide path, which is very, very encouraging. So, 0.5 percentage point reduction in deficit gives every investor a sense that, this government is not going to splurge. So it essentially means that your borrowing costs are going to be lower. Interest rates may not be very high, despite there might be things which are happening externally which can impact interest rates, but not domestically. You're not borrowing. So it crowds in what we technically say, crowds in private sector to invest. So it probably will encourage private sector to invest when you keep the cost lower. So those were the three things which I quickly thought were interesting to point out.
Yeah, actually, I mean, and I just wonder that whether elections don't matter, or there is a certain sense that election is already in the bag. That problem is not perhaps such a humongous challenge. There is a question from the viewers. Aanchal, perhaps you can think about this and we'll get to you. Of how can, Abhin Chakrabarti is asking, how can green tech companies take advantage or take help from this budget? Would you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll get back.
Okay, yeah, we'll wait. Harish, does this mean that populism is completely out, because we're still wondering about the new tax regime, and we'll come to that. Manas Srivastava has asked a question, but do you think that this? I mean, I think we've seen this in the last 3-4 budgets, that there is a certain concerted effort towards pushing for capital expenditure by the government, switching it from revenue to capital, and not necessarily going the whole hog on the populist side. So is this sort of a massive turn in your mind that this... You are mute, perhaps. I think you're mute, Harish, right now.
I think they want to preserve the gunpowder towards the end. It doesn't make sense to splurge now or come out with any schemes right now. Right now, I think most important thing is to manage the middle class narrative, which I said in the beginning itself, because if you remember last time the UPA lost out, I mean, the narrative was set by the Anna movement, right? So I think this is a time which is very important, and which is why I'm saying that what I said in the beginning, that this is a middle class budget, and it doesn't cost much. I think the revenue giveaways, I think the foregone is about some 40,000 crore, whereas all these, and they've not put any big money in any new scheme or something, so they can wait till the end, whereas right now you can't, because the world is very uncertain, and tonight we have the US Fed, we don't know what is going to happen. So it doesn't make sense to, unnecessarily unnerve the bond markets and all right now. So I think macro stability is something which will definitely be appreciated by the markets, and probably, you can do it. I mean, if you remember, PM Kisan was launched, just 3 months before the last elections, December 2018. Your elections were there in March 2019. So you can always conjure up some scheme towards the end, and there is some time for it. So overall, in fact, if you see they have actually saved about 150,000 crore on just subsidy. If you look at food plus fertilizer plus petroleum, I think the savings is about almost 150,000 crore, and they have saved another 29,500 crore on MG Narega. So, all this can be, and all this is being used for the purposes of fiscal consolidation. And maybe, last 3 months, you can, anyway, elections are a 2020 match. They're not a 5-year test or even a one-day international. So that they can do in the end. I mean, that's my feeling. I mean, I could be,
Ishan, we'll have Sandeep shortly joining us. But do you think this new income tax regime, which I think was introduced last year and now has been made default, what do you make of that? Is that something?
So I think the push of this government has been towards simplifying and rationalizing the income tax structure. There are just too many exemptions and too many loopholes that can be taken advantage of. But what we've seen over the last year or so is that there has not been much traction for this from the taxpayers. So the excitement that the finance minister thought that individual taxpayers will receive and show towards this new scheme has not really materialized. So I'm guessing that these new proposals are aimed at sort of facilitating the shift from the old tax regime to the new tax regime. And towards a long-term objective of simplifying and rationalizing the tax structure, I think this would make more sense.
Vaidya, do you think that this notion of making it the default, wasn't that a massive surprise, or was that expected? You're on mute, Vaidya. I think you're on mute. Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I thought that was the highlight of the budget, besides the continuity, which, on capex and, the deficit path. The highlight of the budget was this, about how there's a nudge for people to move to the new tax regime, saying that, any new person who will be a taxpayer will automatically be in the new tax regime. Also, I think the threshold level, increasing it to 7 lakhs, I thought that was very interesting because, it takes care of two segments of Indian demography, which one is the young new entrants to the job market, which is a very interesting segment and a growing segment and an aspirational segment. And the other segment is, retirees who are also good in numbers, large in numbers, and a growing population because of longevity, that you don't have to pay tax up to 7 lakhs, which I thought was very, very significant. For whether there was thought behind it, I'm not sure, but it takes care of one, aspirations of new entrants to the job market, and then the needs of the senior citizens, right? So I thought those were very interesting things, and it also gives me a sense that there was some strategic thinking, because they're saying that this surcharge would not be applicable to those earning, or will be applicable at a lower rate to those earning 5 crores. So, if you look at the India's corporate sector, the top class, or the, cream, would be those who are earning 5 crore and above. So they would move to the new tax regime because there are huge savings and it will percolate down. So whether they thought around those lines, I'm not sure, but it looks as if there is some, so there is a good nudge in this, the highlight being nudged towards asking everybody to shift to the new tax regime.
Okay. We have Sandeep with us, and I think Sandeep, you have to answer the most important question. Can you make sense of the new tax regime, first of all, and also explain that this is a new tax regime as against the old one? Please explain that. And also, we'll talk about the other questions that are being asked.
So first look at new tax regime last year versus new tax regime going forward. So there is because of the change in the tax slabs, there is benefit of up to rupees 37,500 per annum for all individuals up to rupees 15 lakh and above. So the benefit for, say, those earning up to 3 lakh till 7 lakh, it's anyways exempt, rebate, but that is only for people who earn below 7 lakh. If you earn 8 lakh, then you pay taxes on at 5% on 3 lakh, 3 to 6 lakh, 10, nil up to 3 lakh, then 3 to 6 lakh, 5%. So because of the change in the slabs, if you earn up to 3 lakh, now the benefit is 2,500, 3 to 6 lakh, 7,500, 6 to 9 lakh, 15,000, 9 to 12 lakh, 25,000, and 12 to 15 lakh, 37,500. This is the cumulative benefit. So all people who are in the new tax regime or who shift to new tax regime, this is the benefit from last. I mean the existing new tax regime to the one that will come forward. I mean what has been proposed in the budget. That's there. So now old versus new, it's a longest calculation, and yes, we'll come up with that during the day. Now the benefit that is there, the additional benefit that is there is on the individuals earning over rupees 5 crore. There is no change in surcharge in the other slabs, like from 50 lakh to a crore, the surcharge remains same at 10%, from 1 crore to 2 crore, 15%, 2 to 5 crore, 25%. And those above 5 crore salary, their surcharge has been brought down from 37% to 25%. So because of which the effective tax rate goes down from 42.7 to 39%, which is So if a person is earning 5 crore, more than 5 crore, I mean, just assuming 6 crore, 3.7% benefit on that, that's huge. Around that will be 18-19 lakh per annum. So, but that's a very, I think, small segment that is there. And as Vadi said, maybe the thing is to nudge from top in any institution for people to move into the new tax regime.
So tell me something. This is interesting because you say we'll have a system where if you're earning up to 7, you'll get complete rebate. But if you're earning 8 lakhs, then you'll have to pay.
That was there last year till existing. It was up to 5 lakh rebate. That has been increased to 7 lakh. So if you earn 6.5 lakh or 6.9 lakh, you don't have to worry about tax. There is no tax. If you earn 7.1 lakh, then
so is that an incentive to hide income? I mean, somebody earning 8 lakhs would rather
only see it will I think it will be say 50,000 from 7 to 7.5, because the taxation is structured in a manner that up to 6 lakh also it is only 5%. So the how much can you hide? From 7 to 7.25 is what you would want to hide. Suppose your salary is 7.2 lakh, you would say, okay, keep it down to 7 lakh. So because beyond that, it is just at par. I mean, it's not much of a much, because the tax rate is only 5% up to 6 lakh. So it's not much. Yeah.
Right.
So that's it. Yeah.
Right. There are questions on, and I'll just throw them forward and we'll decide.
Then one other thing that I wanted to tell was on the premium thing. There's been a change. So if somebody pays earlier for ULIP premium up to 2.5 lakh, if you pay the annual premium. Beyond that, it was the income is taxed on that policy basically. If you pay a premium of over, now for other schemes also policies. Earlier it was exempt. I mean, income up to whatever premium you were paying. So the government has argued that it was being misused and all that. So now, if you pay premium above rupees 5 lakh, the income will be taxed on that policy.
Okay.
That has so for high that is other than ULIPs. For ULIPs, the thing existed. Now for other policies, they have got this. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Sandeep. So let me go back to Aanchal for that question on how can green tech companies benefit from the budget. But just a moment, Aanchal, let me just throw up a few more questions and we can decide who can answer. Questions are being asked about whether how the budget affects the textile industry, what happens to gold purchase and selling. Harish, Vedi, just maybe think about this if you have. But let's first hear from Aanchal.
Yeah, so there's this whole push towards green energy, and like we have seen, there have been specific announcements for battery storage and hydroelectric. And both of them will help the renewable energy sector projects because this is a new sector, upcoming sector, and industry requires support. So the first initial 3-4 projects for that, if such incentives are given to the industry, that is what the industry is welcoming the announcements for. In fact, there is a push for incentives to states also, which also would be very crucial. There is a great announcement for Ladakh, which also will push the investments in this sector. So these are the kind of methods through which the companies will benefit.
Okay. Now, one question Shrishti Kapoor is asking, and perhaps Sandeep can give an answer to this. Does the new tax regime have the potential to eventually make the old personal income tax regime pointless?
I mean, incrementally, it seems going forward, because anyways, now it has been made the default tax regime. So anybody who enters the taxation net, I mean, he has to, all the new employees, they have to get into the new tax regime. Also with the incremental benefits, I think it will make sense for people earning up to 15 lakh to enter the new tax regime. I still have to do the calculations. It will take, I mean, as I said, during the day, we'll have more clarity on that. but I think it will make a lot of sense for people earning up to 15 lakh, because on the limited savings on housing loan and all that, I think this would make more sense, because up to 7 lakh you are getting 6 lakhs you are getting taxed at only 10%. So there are benefits, I think, and overall, so the 25% has gone away this time. So it will make sense for that limit up to 15 lakh. Now we'll have to see for various income levels, say 25 lakh, 50 lakh. We'll come with the calculations during the day in some time, and we'll see for whom which one makes sense as of now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. There are questions about, several questions. One is about what does this budget do for the youth? Are there specific provisions there on gold, whether, gold prices have been high, what's happening there? Any takers on that? Vaidi, Harish, Ishan?
No, I haven't really looked at, whether they've done anything on duties of customs duties of gold, etc., because I haven't paid notice.
Yeah, custom duties on some gold and silver items have been increased. Doors and everything have been increased, and there is also an increase in imitation jewelry, which we are seeing. Last year also there was a duty increase. So there are some custom duty changes out there.
Okay.
That has been clearly incrementally every year. They have, because of the import of gold rising and the current account deficit concerns. I mean, that has been the thing over the last few years. They have been increasing the tax in just to curb gold import. That has been going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Harish, any sense you have on unemployment? Harish or Ishan, either of one, is unemployment anywhere in the focus in the budget?
I think I think they are laying bets entirely on capital expenditure going up, because we know that there is no stimulus from the external sector, right? I mean, including IT and these things, and plus probably startups and all these things. We don't have that kind of money available, right? I mean, there's a liquidity problem. So I think everything depends now. I think they are very clear that they are looking at a recovery based on domestic investment. I mean, it'll be a domestic investment propelled recovery, and probably, I don't know, maybe more of manufacturing and those kind of things. And the government has stepped up capital expenditure, and probably now they expect that the private sector also will come in, because their balance sheets are far better. The banking systems, whatever, their bad loans have been cleaned up to a great extent. So I think it's purely a bet on domestic capital formation, and like what Vaidi said, I think that's very interesting what he said. I mean, if a youth who's earning, he doesn't have to pay any tax up to 7 lakh rupees. 7 lakh rupees a year is more than 50,000-60,000 rupees. It's a feel good, right? I mean, I earn 60,000, I don't have to pay any tax. So I think that's a very big spur. I mean, from a youth point of view. For all the new job entrants. But otherwise, I don't know. I mean, it looks. I mean, at least IT sector and all looks like. I mean, going by the data which the big five have. If you go by the results, the headcount hasn't gone up, right? I mean, I think it peaked at around 16 lakh for the 5 firms, and I think it's come down a little bit. Yeah.
Ishan,
I just want to add to that. The fact that they have brought down the Narega budget from about 90,000 crores to 60,000 crores. I mean, that itself tells you that they don't see demand for Narega to the extent it was there this year or last year. So that's their expectation. I mean, it may or may not be true. But that tells you about what Harish was saying, that they are banking on something else, right? They are not banking on government's revenue expenditure or through Narega to give jobs. So that seems to be the strategy.
Yeah.
I think that's quite remarkable now. On one end, I'm just trying to put two things together. Like on one end, they're saying that they need to create 10 lakh jobs, which was clearly a poll kind of outlook. Chunav aa raha hai, there are no jobs, and there is some anger in the people about jobs. So you say, 1 million jobs in the next 16, 18 months or something like that. So on one hand, you don't really have too many jobs and government has to create jobs, which is completely different from what the Prime Minister has been saying all along before that, saying that the government cannot provide jobs, but it has to be the private sector. So he was very subtle messages from the Prime Minister in the past that, don't look at Mai Baap Sarkar as the, giver of jobs. Private sector has to come, they have to invest and create jobs. But that 1 million jobs was clearly targeted at, dousing some bit of the anger. And then this Narega thing, when I juxtapose it, it sounds very interesting that they have sharply cut it. I'm not sure 100% about, whether there is demand or there is not enough demand for that, because in some areas we have also heard of, complaints by states saying that, money is not coming in. So there have been complaints from certain states. So that is surprising. Maybe at that, possibly I can see that, people have come back to jobs from their rural areas, contact-based services because of this vaccination, saturated vaccination. There are more jobs, restaurants, hotels, etc., have opened up. So people are going back to cities to do jobs. And maybe there is not such great demand from the migrants who had come back home for jobs. So probably that could be one reason, which, the survey does talk about how contact-based services are adding to employment and, economic activity. The other thing very clearly, 2-3 things which point towards more jobs is this, capex, which Harish, very clearly said that such huge capex will trigger, investments in construction, large scale infrastructure projects, housing, where, you already very clearly are seeing that the inventory levels are coming down. So the demand for housing probably is growing, and more houses and probably will be built. So there'll be huge demand for that. So I think jobs focus comes from that largely. And then this is the new entrance and all. Actually, it's a virtuous cycle, right? I'm sounding like as if I wrote the budget or, but it is indeed a virtuous cycle when there are more entrants to the job market. And with a 7 lakh threshold beyond only which you pay taxes, there'll be more discretionary spending. So youngsters, I would imagine, are spending more rather than putting their money on buying a house and, and giving EMIs.
True. No, that's very true. Also, because Manrega versus if we see construction labor and construction worker, I mean, if Manrega thing is coming down, if there's a push on capex and construction and housing and all that have to pick up, there will be employment there generated, a lot more employment. So maybe that could be one reason. That is what they expect, as Ishan was also saying. I mean, it has come down. So the expectation is that because of capex push, this construction and real estate, a huge maybe job creation in demand for workers basically.
Yeah. Sandeep, I'll come to you for some market reaction on how the markets have sort of taken the reacted to the budget. But before that, let me just get a word in from Aanchal about the whole gold question, selling of gold. Yeah, Aanchal, what you've got?
Coming back to the gold topic, but there is a new announcement there that they have made for promotion of electronic form of gold. So the announcement is about that the transfer will not be treated as the conversion from physical to electronic form will not be treated as a transfer, and neither would attract capital gains. So at a time when people have dipped into their savings and their gold, this is one kind of probably incentive that the government is looking at when people are buying more gold.
Okay. Sandeep, when the budget started, there was a distinct dip in Nifty, and then as soon as the infrastructure bit was talked about, it
infrastructure bit and the fiscal deficit. You have to see exactly after the fiscal deficit numbers were announced at 5.9, it just went up back to 600. I mean that it opened today before the announcement. Now there is some profit booking happening. Obviously, I mean because it went up over 1,000 points, nearly 2%. So there has been profit booking, but I think the market is optimistic. See, ITC, very interesting. when the cigarette rates were announced, that there's a 16% increase in the tax, it fell sharply by 7%. Now, as market realizes that it is price inelastic, it is a commodity that is RD. So it is back. It is in the green, from down 7% to now 1.3%. So I think a market is also absorbing the news as it is, and some profit booking has happened because it went up by around 2%. So, yeah.
There's one point that I would like to make.
Yeah, Ishan.
If you just look at the expenditure side, your total expenditure is about 45 lakh crores, right? It's up only 7.5% from last year's RE. This is when you're expecting the economy to grow at 10.5 nominal. So you're spending. So the fiscal deficit is primarily an outcome of expenditure compression. I mean, expenditure is not even growing at the rate of nominal GDP growth.
Yeah.
And I mean, we saw this yesterday, but the discussion on the fiscal stance was not made in the context of the global slowdown that everybody's anticipating next year. I mean, that's just a point to be made, that you've compressed spending when you expect growth to slow down.
Yeah. I think this. Don't you agree that this is largely that whole minimum government or the role of government promise?
I don't know. I would assume that they hope that the expenditure switching that Vaidyanathan and Harish have referred to is going to offset this through a higher multiplier. That's what I would assume that the explanation would be. But it's an interesting thing to note.
Yeah. I think Sandeep had something to say on housing.
Yeah, as we were talking now, see the PM Awas Yojana, the outlay has been increased by 66% to 79,000 crore. Also, if you see inventory levels, as Vedi pointed out, the absorption, it's almost absorbed. We didn't know. I mean, slowly and steadily, the 3-4 years back, the kind of inventory levels that were there, they are over now. And so real estate and housing and construction, they are going to be big going forward, and which is why this outlay 66% increase in the PMAY outlay.
Yeah, and I think that would also explain the whole notion of where the employment, construction is the biggest generation for jobs of this nature.
Right. So Manrega versus this.
Yeah.
From rural labor to urban labor.
Yeah.
No, but this is very interesting. Ishan, I haven't looked at the numbers, but I must look at it more carefully now. When you're saying that expenditure, there is a very nominal increase, like 7%, right? And which is almost, which is not even the growth rate which is being talked about right now. In real terms, so we are
closer to the real term growth.
Closer to the real growth rate that we are looking at. Then probably from what Harish was saying earlier about whether there are savings somewhere else which they have made, like if in subsidies they have saved last year so much, and if subsidy, I am not sure about, again I have not looked at the subsidy burdens, whether they are not very high, then probably they are this expenditure rationalization and compression at right places, probably. I don't know, one has to look at that. Could be interesting to see whether it's really an expenditure budget then, right? If there's such a small increase in expenditure size, then it is all about compression of expenditure and right sizing of expenditure, so to say.
Yeah, I think the hope, to our viewers also, they must understand that when the government spends on revenue and when the government spends on capital, the multiplier effect or the benefits to the broader economy are very different, and they're starkly different. When the government spends on capital expenditure, the multiplier is 2.5, which means 100 rupees you spend on building a road or a bridge, and it gives you 250 rupees benefit to the broader economy. And that is where perhaps the GDP will go up as against maybe spending on revenue, which is salary, pensions, and everything, everyday expenditure. So I think the expenditure switching is what is allowing them to do a compression on the overall expenditure and hoping that the GDP will still rise. Let's just check if there are any more questions left with us. I think there was something on health and education allocation. Is that, Ishan, the numbers seem to be rather muted for health at least. What is your take?
Yeah, I mean, just a broad look. It's gone up from about 7,000 crores in the revised estimates to about 88,000 crores.
89. So yeah, I mean, very marginal, marginal at one level, because looking at last year's budget allocation, the health actually, the revised estimates for health suggest that the actual expenditure on health was substantially lower than what was budgeted. Quite remarkably lower than what was budgeted. 86,606 crores was budgeted, and only 77,351 was actually spent. So on health, actually, the expenditure has been distinctly lower, and the same story holds for education. The revised estimates are significantly lower than the budget estimates. So yeah, I mean, what would explain that, Harish? Any take on that, and why health and education revised estimates are substantially lower than budget estimates?
I don't know. I haven't really looked at those numbers.
Health can be COVID.
And education, I haven't.
COVID. So
health can be COVID.
Over budgeted. And
because
Probably. And maybe there's no capacity also, it's not easy to spend, because definitely like in education, it's not easy to spend like that. And still, I think kids have just started going back to school, right? I mean, it'll take some time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'll very quickly take like 30-second, 40-second takes overall on the budget. Start with Harish. What is your overall take?
No, I think I'll come back to what I said in the beginning itself. This is basically the government is telling the private sector that, look, now the time has come. You guys invest. Okay, we have done everything from our end. We took care of the poor during the worst of the crisis, right? And even in this budget, we have budgeted a capital expenditure of 10 lakh crore. There's nothing more. We have reduced your corporate tax, right? Your balance sheets are far better than what they were about 5 years back. Banks are willing to lend. So you guys now do the hard lifting. We have done the heavy lifting. We have already done, and it is entirely up to you. So and in that way, I think it's probably whatever. They're not rocked this thing, no? And by sticking to whatever some kind of a fiscal consolidation glide path, I think the markets are also assured by that, and that's very much necessary in these times. When you have global monetary tightening and those kind of things. So you can't afford any kind of a profligacy, and which overall I think it's quite sensible, and probably we'll see some action, I think, off the budget. Because we know that everything that this government has done is outside the budget. Including the corporate tax cut which we had in September 2019. Right? I mean, everything is out. Whether it is demonetization, whether it is GST, everything is outside the budget. So I think picture abhi baki hai. Yeah.
Right. Sandeep, what's your quick take on the budget finally?
I think on this personal thing is income tax itself, I would say that it will bring a consumption push up to 15 lakh if you get 37,500 per annum, 3,500 a month, around 3,500 a month additional disposable income. That will, and also as we have been talking of this K-shaped recovery, that all the high-end products are being sold, but bottom of the pyramid, there's an issue. Now, we may see up to 7 lakh if people have to pay no tax. We may see the entry-level products, the consumption boost as well. So that could also be a big takeaway from that aspect. I mean, take a person buying a bike of rupees 50,000, the EMI is say 2,000. I mean, this can fund it. This saving can fund that. Yeah. So we may see that. Yeah.
Okay. Very quick takes, Ishan, and we'll keep ready for the last.
So on capital expenditure, the trend so far of last almost more than I think a decade has been that states have spent more than the center, right, on capital expenditure. I don't know whether with this increase that would have reversed. States are obviously going to present their budgets in the coming weeks, but I would think that the center has really ramped up its capital spending this year and the next coming year. So put together, let's assume that states are allocate a similar amount, right? I mean, it's around 60% of total government spending is on by states, but let's assume if the states allocate the same amount, that means about 20 lakh crores or roughly would be general government capital spending in the economy in 2023-24. That's a very sizable number, up from almost half of it a few years ago.
It's a doubling from 3-4 years, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's a very sizable push from the government, given its finances, right? Given the last 3 years of the pandemic, the financial position, its constraints, its need to spend on food, on fertilizer subsidies and all that, right? So that's that will be a very, very big push from its side, given its constraints.
Right. Vaidi, what's your final take? I mean,
no, absolutely. I think, everybody has summed it up very well. The only thing is, I think the government acknowledges that it needs to be a player in this business of growth, in the sense that it has to spend more. I think, still it is not yet sure whether the private sector is going to kick in. It wants to do everything for the private sector to draw courage to come and invest, but it is not sure, because there are many things which are still unknowns, and the government is not really invested heavily on the risks that the external front presents before the Indian economy, the challenges, right? Exports are not going to grow. You don't know how the rupee will react, whether it is going to depreciate sharply. You don't still know the geopolitics, the Russia-Ukraine war. I think the other big factor which, the budget is not really concerned about is this opening up of China. China opens up, I was talking to people who went to Davos. Everybody was saying, boss, we are thinking of, China plus one strategy of the West, etc. It's all bunkum. They say that China opening up, everybody moves to China to invest. So let's not think that all investment will come to India just because, China plus one strategy. I don't think that is happening so easily. So I think the government is very clearly focused. I have to step in. I have to invest more. As Ishan said, in 3 years, from less than 5 lakh crore to 10 lakh crore is a massive ramp up. Second, for states, they want states to continue with their capex. That 50-year loan continues. So I think they want states to complement their capex. And I thought the highlight, as I said, in this budget was this movement towards a new tax regime, which is simpler, without exemptions, which is, I think we underestimate the impact of a simpler tax regime on the larger economy, because the paperwork, accounting for exemptions, etc., is a painful business. So I think this is a more cleaner way. So I think growth focus and fiscal consolidation, I think that is kind of very clear in this budget.
Right. So, I mean, by the looks of it, I mean, it doesn't rock any boats, but whether it lifts all boats, that needs to be seen. That remains to be seen. Thank you all for joining in this special broadcast, and stay tuned. Prime Minister is about to address. So stay with the channel. Thank you all.